Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another session of Easy Dharma for the New Normal. And today we're continuing on Introduction to Buddhism by Geshe Kelsang. So today's chapter is going to be on the three higher trainings. All right, so last week we did renunciation, developing renunciation, and there's still quite a bit more before we finish this. Oh, not really that much. Maybe another month, 4 or 5 weeks, I think. Then we'll finish the book. Then I'll figure out what next to do. So anyway, and before we begin, let's see who's on. I can see that I'm online. Good. Quiet. Okay, let me see. Let me go to low res. I can see myself, but I cannot see the chat yet. Strange. Still loading. But whatever it is, okay. Today what I did was today I actually went to a flea market and I have a bunch of ang pao money that I've been keeping from very kind sponsors, very kind Kecharans actually, who's been giving me like $10 ang paos and all that. And I've been keeping it for a while actually. And sometimes I take it out to make some offerings, and just that I happened to like pile them up together, and I was counting, and I realized it's quite substantial. So I thought maybe I should invite this 4-arm manjushri I saw in the flea market. So I am basically someone who is really into manjushri, and when I first met Rinpoche told me that I'm connected to manjushri and I should do his practice, either manjushri or Lama Tsongkhapa. He actually asked me to choose that time, and I chose manjushri. Okay, the chat is loaded. I can see Jillian, good evening. Ailing, good evening. And Kwang Ming, good evening. Yiman, Yvonne, is that how you pronounce your name? Yvonne Lau. Esther Go, good evening to everyone. So today's topic on the three higher trainings, I think it's quite technical, but it's not very long though. It's quite technical. It is quite it's about achieving liberation through the three higher trainings. All right, so why don't we start, and then we'll kind of talk and discuss. You can ask me questions. You might find it difficult. Maybe if my explanation is not clear enough, do let me know, and maybe I can rephrase things, because sometimes it doesn't come up clear enough. Then we'll work on it. Okay, the three higher trainings. As mentioned before, the actual paths to liberation from samsara are the three higher trainings: higher moral discipline, higher concentration, and higher wisdom. They are higher trainings because they are practiced with the motivation of renunciation. Renunciation means what? We talked about it last week. It is that wish to leave samsara, is to leave the causes of our suffering. All right? To attain, and also in order to leave the causes, or to abandon the causes of suffering, we need to understand, at least have an acceptance that we are suffering. Because some of us don't even realize, don't even know, and what is the nature of suffering and all, we don't really know. So at least you must have an understanding and appreciation that why we are suffering, how we're creating causes for suffering now and in the future, and also rebirths into suffering. Okay, so anyway, that is renunciation. So it's higher because it's motivated by that. To attain liberation, we need to abandon self-grasping, the root of samsara, by attaining a special wisdom directly realizing emptiness or selflessness. This attainment depends upon a special type of concentration known as tranquil abiding, which in turn depends upon pure moral discipline. Moral discipline helps to pacify our distractions. Stay with me for a while, okay? Stay with me. I will explain all this. The main obstacle to attaining concentration or tranquil abiding. Tranquil abiding makes our mind stable, lucid, and powerful. And wisdom realizing emptiness directly opposes self-grasping ignorance. Therefore, if we practice moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom with the motivation of renunciation, we will definitely be able to destroy our self-grasping and attain liberation from samsara. Okay, everything I just read probably over you for many of you. Some of you who are more more well-read will probably, some of it will, you probably get the technical terms. But let me explain a little bit. The root of samsara is self-grasping. What is self-grasping? We spoke about it before, and we're going to revisit it today because that's the core of why we are doing the 3 higher trainings. Self-grasping is very subtle. It's extremely subtle. Subtle means what? Subtle is not something that's obvious, not something that's gross, that's easy to see, easy to perceive. It's not. It is something that is very, that requires a lot of meditation, a lot of contemplation, and perhaps a lot of wisdom to realize something that's very subtle, like this, self-grasping. So self-grasping is, what are you grasping at? We're not talking about the self-cherishing mind, we're talking about grasping upon a self-identity, a wrong self-identity. Okay, all of us have self-identity. And I mean, what is a self-identity? Self-identity is, we give it a name. Like, I'm Pastor David. Okay, Pastor David is male. I'm male. So I have a fixed view of how a male should act, what a male should do, what a pastor should do. So it's fixed in my mind. And when things go in ways that challenges my masculinity or challenges my authority as a pastor, then it upsets my world. So our self-identity can be challenged, it can be upset, it can be, why is it upset? Although it doesn't really mean anything, it's just a label. It's just a label. Ultimately, on a grander scheme of things, our self-identity is just a label. Just like our names. For everyone has a name. You have a name, there's Jillian, there's Jerry, there's Kelvin, there's David Chu, good evening, hi, Esther. All these are names that we put on ourselves, but they actually don't really exist because it's just a label. Ultimately, there's just label upon ourself. So it's a self-identity. All of us have this self-identity, okay? So according to the Buddha, our self-identity don't actually really exist. Okay, I won't go into the, where is the I? Is it my body? Is it my I? No, let's not go into that. It doesn't really exist because it always changes. There's few reasons for why it doesn't exist. It doesn't always changes. It is not based on one element, our body, our personality, our character. It's not just one. It has a collective whole. So when something changes, everything changes, and your self-identity is changed. So in other words, it is not really real. It's constantly evolving. And because it's not really real, it's exaggerated. It's exaggerated by us. That's the problem, and that is the root core of all our problems, and that's why we need to engage in practices and of 3 higher trainings and all that, in order to realize this, because it's something very subtle. Some of you may get it, some of you may not. If you don't, please ask the questions. All right. So that's what it's talking about in self-grasping. Let me see what other. So in order to abandon self-grasping on this identity that is exaggerated, that doesn't really exist, which is called the root of samsara, we need to develop a certain wisdom of realizing emptiness or selflessness, right? Independent on concentration, known as tranquil abiding. Okay, so all of us live our lives in kind of semi-confusion. Sometimes some of us are more confused than us, some than others. But generally, we live in confusion. And confusion here, we're not talking of being blur or being, like our world is topsy-turvy, our mind is topsy. It's not that kind of confusion. It is not seeing things as they really exist. It is not perceiving things as they truly exist. We are seeing it through our self-grasping, self-identity. This identity that we make up for ourselves, these labels we put on ourselves. These labels are a symptom of this identity. Okay, so you may not fully grasp, but this is just on a surface level. Make it easier for everyone, including myself, to explain, because there's actually deeper levels to it. But on the surface, I'm using what Rinpoche has explained before. Of this self-grasping, he calls it labels. He calls it self-identity. So I'm using it to explain it to you. All right. And yeah. So because all of our self don't really exist, so we're actually working on something that doesn't. We're basing on our reaction to situations, to people, and to situations, people, and circumstances, whatever, based on this identity that constantly changing, constantly doesn't really exist. And much of our self-identity actually apparently comes from the past. It comes from a reaction to our past, a past experience, a past, trauma, a past childhood, that, we were brought up in a certain way, and we project it into the future, into the now. And although the situations are different, but our habits remain the same. So because of that, we create a lot of problems for ourselves. So I don't have to go into too much detail, because we're not talking about this. It's more of the Three High trainings, but just telling you that. Okay, so give you an idea of what the Three High trainings, what it's trying to change and attack. All right, so, okay, where I want to go? Tranquil abiding, concentration. So when I mentioned about confusion, it's because of the way we perceive things that is not, that's based on something from the past. There's the past negative emotion, past negative experience. So we are reacting negatively. So when we react negatively to a situation that appears similar, for example, in the past when someone lifts the hand, it was because perhaps we got a slap before by our teacher or our classmate, and then now, you see someone lift their hand, they're actually just playing around with us, fooling around with us. But we react in fear, we react in anger, we go into a reaction based on the past. See, we react things based on what we experienced before, although we don't fully realize that the situations are not the same anymore. But we go into that mode. So that confusion, because every single situation is always different from the past. It's never the same. So our perception of how things are is based on our past experience, not the present. And because of that, it's confusion. And because of that confusion, a lot of things arises for us that we create a lot of. Perhaps we have wrong perception of people. Perhaps we get angry at people. Perhaps we bear a grudge, and perhaps a lot of things negative things can come up based on such situations, and it has in the past and will continue in the future. And whatever it is, that's how we suffer. That's how we create more suffering, and we continue to do so until we realize the truth of our self-identity, the truth of the wisdom that root. So it takes a special kind of wisdom to realize it. So in order to do that, we need to calm our mind, to achieve a certain level of concentration. So when you see our minds right now, it is said, I'm sure if you've heard before, it's like a huge lake, and then it's like because of the negative things, of all our negative karma we've done in the past, all the negative imprints and all the things, of negative emotions, Each negative emotion leaves an imprint in our mind. So it's stored in our mind. So it's constantly churning with negativity, right? So because of that, there's confusion. Because of that, we don't see things as they really are. And we create the more circumstances to be like that. So in order to calm things down, first is to develop stillness, concentration, meditation. So that's what tranquil abiding is on a very simplified level. Actually, it's more than that. There's 9 stages of concentration which you don't need to know at this point. But in the future, when you do delve into this, there is a lot of technical detail that will be good to know. There are stages in which to develop concentration, right? So when we develop concentration, we're able to focus the mind. When we have focus of the mind, we're able to bring the attention to the mind on virtue, on virtuous objects, on virtuous thoughts, okay? And we stay on our virtue, because right now we are more tossed by our emotions, and we lash out. It's very quick for us to react. It's very quick for us to retaliate when someone does something that upsets us, that harms us, in our perception harms us, that challenges us, that does damage to us in one way or another. So when we have concentration and stillness, we're able to not react negatively, not have the negative thought first, because for us it's negative immediately. Retaliation, hurt the other person. When we do that, it just perpetuates the karma. So it's not a right or wrong thing. It is the seeds for future suffering. So before we do, so that's why developing concentration, stillness of the mind is very important. Not just to calm the mind, is also to bring the attention of the mind to focus on virtue at will. At the moment, we cannot focus. Trust me, you may think that, I can will myself to be a good person. I'm a good person. You may think yourself as a good person. Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because the situations in the office, in your daily lives, on your attachments, how much you are swayed by attachments. It's actually your attachments, it's your negative emotions that dictate your life, that dictate your reaction, that dictate your karma, not you. So when you have concentration, you are able to turn things around, that you bring the attention on virtue, not your attachments, not on what people do, what people say, no, on virtue, on being good, on thinking of others, no matter how people treat you. At the moment we can't, because we are not trained yet, so concentration is important, right? Sorry, this chapter is going to be technical, but I hope I bring a little bit more clarity for what we're reading. Although this is introduction to Buddhism, but this chapter is particularly an intermediate level. All right. So I think that's all for now. We're going to delve deeper into like moral discipline, concentration, and higher wisdom. Okay, so let's go into it. Training in higher moral discipline. In general, moral discipline is a virtuous mental determination to abandon any fault or a bodily verbal action motivated by such determination. We practice moral discipline whenever we put this determination into practice. If our practice of moral discipline is not motivated by renunciation, it will cause us to attain high rebirth within samsara, such as rebirth as a human being or a god. But if our practice of moral discipline is motivated by the renunciation, it will lead to the attainment of liberation from samsara. Wow. This is why moral discipline is practiced with motivation of renunciation is called higher moral discipline. Higher moral discipline is an actual path to liberation. The pure practices of ordination vows, the bodhisattva vows, and the tantric vows are all included within training in higher moral discipline and all paths to liberation. So what what is defined here as moral discipline is your mental determination, your determination to practice virtue by abandoning all sorts of bodily, verbal, and bodily and verbal, and of course mental. But mental is later. Mental is on late other. So it's bodily and verbal actions that harm others. You abandon it. So what it is it is already said that it is your vows that you take, your refuge. Principally, I think most people who are watching this would have their refuge vows. That would be your principal moral discipline that you will be practicing. Then on the other hand, you may have, if you take someone as your teacher, right? The instructions, the teachings that the teacher has imparted, you put it into practice. When you put it into practice, when you is engaging in moral discipline, because you determine. Another form of moral discipline would be for us to do our sadhanas on a daily basis, on a consistent daily. As much, some of us who are new may find this a challenge. So what you can do is you find ways to go around it. So it becomes a discipline, a practice of discipline. No matter how things are on that day, we strive to do some sort of spirituality. Not just go home and then turn on the TV and slack off. Some of us have problems about, like if we do that, then at least if you slack off in front of the TV, do some mantras. You can, I'm sure most people can, I'm sure all of us actually can multitask. It's just how important it is to you. That's the defining feature. So not only having moral discipline, it has to have a motivation of renunciation. So if you don't have motivation or renunciation, it just becomes an ordinary action. It says there's a danger because when we practice morality and we don't have renunciation, it becomes just an action that propels us to another positive rebirth. And you think, what's wrong with that? There's ultimately nothing wrong. There's not a right or wrong. In Buddhism, it's not a black and white thing like wrong, right. It's not. Although it's the vows and all that, it seems like black and white like that, but no. What it means is it's not so skillful because you're not aiming higher. You're aiming lower. And when you're aiming lower, yes, you can get another positive, good rebirth, and another human rebirth, whatever it is, another fortunate rebirth, another comfortable existence in your next life. But you see, when you have not trained yourself in developing renunciation, having a higher view of our life to attain something higher, you'll never achieve it. So you always be there, and what happens is when you're always there, there's a high chance that you'll be derailed. There's a high chance you'll be distracted. There's a high chance you will give it up, because our negative karma, we have so much negative karma from previous lives, even in this life, and constantly, because we are not attained, because we have not achieved higher motivation of renunciation, we are constantly creating negative karma. Every moment, every selfish thought, every thought that we have about ourselves is a karma that we are triggering at the moment of selfishness. Scary, I know, but that's the thing. That's how important it is to develop a higher motivation. All right. So at this point, it is important that we have to strive higher. At this point in the teachings already, we are striving to achieve something higher, to achieve some sort of renunciation. Renunciation is an attainment, by the way. So in developing renunciation, we have to aim higher. Okay, so in fulfilling our commitment, our refuge commitments, bear in mind it's not just the ethics of refuge. There's also commitments that go along with it, like making offerings and so forth. All right, so you've got to educate yourself well for people who have already taken refuge, what it entails, so that you fulfill it to the T. All right, and I think that's it for now for this. Okay, so all of us have to realize that it's not just the vows; it's also the commitments that we have. There, you see, like the teachings on karma. Like when we practice morality, we practice it towards different subjects. The highest morality is the highest subject we'll be talking about is to our guru, our practice, our sadhana. That's the highest. That's the most important. That's the most. It's either a do or die. I mean, if you do it, you gain a lot of merits. If you don't, you gain a lot of demerits, a lot of negative karma. All right, so that's the highest. And then we have the object that is middling, which is our family, our parents. The highest will be our parents. And then our relatives, our siblings, then our friends, then strangers. So there is a level of how we practice morality. What I mean by morality with others besides your guru and all that is the promises that you have made with them. Let's say you made a promise to a friend, a Dharma brother, a sister. It is morality when you uphold the practice. Uphold your promise. Keep your promises. That is a practice of morality at a middling level, lower level. I'm saying lower doesn't mean it's something that can be neglected. No. It is something that we should do. Because if we are the type of person who cannot keep our promises to our friends and family, don't talk about higher practices. Okay, so but the karma is not as heavy, but there is karma. All right, so it's important to understand the practice of morality. It covers not just our guru, but we usually in the text they always talk about guru, our samaya, our commitment, to the Dharma, to our yidam, to our Dharma protector, to all that. But we doesn't talk so much as our, in terms of the Dharma brothers and sisters, our family, our friends. All that covers too. All right, it's important. Okay. Okay. Let me see. I see some question here. Mr. Lam, Pastor, in our pursuit to achieve higher moral discipline, does it mean that we need to abandon enjoyments such as watching movies over a weekend and other activities such as retail therapy? That's a very good question. Moral discipline doesn't mean abandonment of enjoyments. Does not. It means prioritizing. Okay, in your context, it'll be prioritizing your practice, your promises, your commitments versus your attachments, which is what you're talking about. Movies, retail therapy is your attachments. So it's a higher priority. Though what all that comes a lower priority, you still can have that because it's not immediately harmful. It doesn't really harm you directly. It is not like negative karma, heavy negative karma. It is not good karma. I mean, in a sense that it is attachment, right? It's not good, but it's not so severe as in like you're angry, like it generates anger or it harms someone. It doesn't harm anyone. So it is something that just increases your attachments. So when it increases your attachments, the priority should be lower. It doesn't mean you cannot enjoy. No, it doesn't. But your priority, you must know your priority. Some people don't have that priority. It's reversed. Your attachment is above, your dharma is below. Okay, when you do that, then you don't have renunciation. Okay, so if we want to develop renunciation, you have to prioritize your practice. You have to prioritize your spiritual commitments. Okay, your promises that you made. Then when you hold that priority, and occasionally you do, indulge in your attachments, then you can develop renunciation over time. Okay, so that will lead to a renunciation. You haven't developed renunciation yet, obviously, because you're still attached to your enjoyments. There's nothing wrong about that. It's just that know your priority. Okay, so that is renunciation. It's not about giving it up immediately, because not possible for us at this time. Our attachments, if it's not harmful, if it doesn't bring you away from the Dharma, we can indulge in it, but we have to limit it. We have to have small dosage. I call it small dosage so that we don't get too attached. It doesn't take us away from the Dharma and our practice. Okay, that's important to know. All right. Okay, let's go to the next one. Training in higher concentration. Pure concentration is a mind whose nature is to be single-pointedly placed on a virtuous object and whose function is to prevent distraction. Concentration practiced with the motivation of renunciation is higher concentration and is an actual path to liberation. Whenever we engage in meditation with the motivation of renunciation, we are training in higher concentration. There are many levels of concentration. To attain a direct realization of emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality, we need the concentration of tranquil abiding. Tranquil abiding is a concentration that possesses a special type of suppleness attained by progressing through 9 levels of concentration called the 9 mental abidings. When we have attained tranquil abiding, our mind is very stable, clear, and powerful, and so it's very easy for us to attain Dharma realizations. A detailed explanation of how to attain tranquil abiding can be found in the Lamrimla. So what happens is, let me re-explain this in a way that you can relate. Concentration, right? So concentration, as I said earlier, is about concentrating, placing our mind, focusing our mind on a virtuous thought or object without letting our negative emotions get in the way, distracting us. Because most of the time, that's what happens. Think about it. We want to do our sadhana. We love to do our sadhana. And we already know that we cannot do long sadhanas in 15-20 minutes. But when we do our sadhana, our mind is not there. Our mind is actually on Facebook. Some of us are amazing multitaskers, okay? When we do our sadhana, right, we are doing dual sadhanas, okay? We're doing the mantra, reciting with our mouth, but with one hand holding the mala, the other hand holding the phone, scrolling Facebook, scrolling WhatsApp, answering messages, work, email. Wow, we can multitask so incredible, That is not concentration. It looks like we are very concentrated, but that's not concentration because we are not placing it at will. Okay, we are actually distracted already. We are distracted. So what happens is your sadhana will have minimal effect. The problem about that is, I would say a problem. I say that when you do your sadhana like that, what happens is you will find that your concentration will not be there. You'll be easily distracted, and your importance placed on the Dharma will diminish over time, because it's just something that you do as a chore. It's just something you have to do, and then you just do, and then while you do something that you want to do, like answering messages, scrolling through social media, watching TV. So I know and then some of you are saying, hey, how come you say you can recite mantras and while watching? Yes, but that's not your sadhana. You do additional, so that when you are watching TV, you are doing some sort of practice together with indulging in your attachments. All right? So it's not that. It is about concentration, developing concentration single-pointedly, focusing. Just like on every Saturday and Sundays when we tune in to JP Tong's morning meditation class sessions, right? What does he ask you to do? He asks you to breathe and focus on your breath, right? So focusing on your breath, and then when your mind gets distracted, you bring it back. Same thing with your sadhanas. That's what you're supposed to do. And if you're able to bring that kind of concentration into your sadhana, that's even more meritorious than on your breath, because your breath has no merits. It's an object that is neutral. It doesn't benefit you in any way. It's just an object for you to focus, to develop concentration. So now you are doing a sadhana, you are concentrating on the sound, you're concentrating on the visualization, if you are even concentrating doing any visualizations. So when your mind is distracted, bring it back. Okay, so when you bring it back, each time you bring it back, you focus. Over time, you find your concentration will sharpen, along with other benefits of the practice. There are many, depending if it's Lama Tsongkhapa, there's incredible amount of benefits. Incredible. So it is extremely beneficial if we develop some sort of concentration in our practice. All right? So for us, that will be our practice of concentration for us, okay, at our level. If you want to engage in higher types, there is higher types which is not, won't be applicable for us at this time, but they are. All right. Okay, let me see. The activity itself is not bad, but if we get too attached to it, then it will be harmful to our spiritual practice. That's from Sharon in response to Mr. Lam about our movies and all that. Yeah, that's true. So it's so much. It's more of priority. That's how I see it. When you prioritize your practice, your commitments first, you accomplish it, and then you have some time. Then you do engage in your attention. So because at this point, if you're asked to abandon it, I don't think that's feasible for many of us, especially if you're for most of you guys. Even for me, I still haven't abandoned movies and shopping at this point. But we should know where our priority is. All right? Okay, so concentration. Yeah. So concentration is very important because there's a lot of benefits when you develop concentration. That, I mean, it says here in the ultimate attainment is tranquil abiding, which is after you've gone through the 9 stages of meditation. There is a tanka, of the elephant and the monkey and the monk, and it goes through 9 stages, and each illustrates a level of concentration, a level of meditation, a stage of meditation. So at the end of it, you achieve that tranquil abiding that's been explained here. All right. At this point, it would not be important at this point for us to go through all that technical detail. More important is to develop concentration of our practice, our sadhanas on a daily basis, because that will have tremendous benefit. So and it's not so much as any complicated practice, it is just when you get distracted, bring it back. When you get distracted, bring it back. And don't do 2-3 things at the same time while you do our sadhana. Just do your sadhana, focus on that sadhana and on your sadhana. Don't multitask when you're doing your sadhana. Take it as a practice of concentration. It's a meditation. All right? If you need to do something urgent, stop and do it and come back, rather than do it simultaneously to save time. Okay? Okay, now we go into the last bit. Okay, there's Sharon's here. Sharon says, for young kids or even teens, is there a way to help them develop concentration besides getting them to do meditation? For young kids, I'm not really good with young kids, but I guess concentration, maybe songs sometimes help. Maybe when doing chanting, I don't know. I will need to get back to you. What do you think of Pastor Niral? You have more experience with teens. How do you help them to gain concentration? I know it'd be harder for them because there are raging hormones and peer pressure and
usually the best is
meditation.
Like you've got all these, like in the West, the way that they used to
a guided meditation, a light guided meditation.
Yeah. You do have guided meditation.
Okay. That's what Pastor Niral recommended. He said still meditation would be very beneficial, but not heavy meditation, but something light, something guided to help them have a taste of meditation. And there apparently are sessions and experts and people giving meditation specifically to children and teenagers, and so that will be helpful. So ultimately, you can't go wrong with meditation. It's just to get them to follow the program. I think that's the key. So that would be most beneficial, perhaps. Maybe breath meditation, something like that, or guided. When you ask them to focus on a particular object, like the parents or whatever it is. Because there are many meditation is just basically bringing an attention or focus, concentration on a particular virtuous object, or object lah, just object, not necessarily virtuous. But in Buddhist meditation, we always focus on something virtuous. For example, like the mantra. For example, like a recitation of a text. For example, like visualization of a Buddha, the form of Buddha, because there's a lot of benefits that come from it. All right. So even that is meditation. So when people ask you, do you meditate? You should be able to say, yes, I do. And explain why is chanting, recitation, your sadhana and visualization is meditation. All right. Okay. Let's go on. Last bit. There's only two. Let me see. Yeah, there's only two more paragraphs. Training in higher wisdom. In general, wisdom is a virtuous mind that functions mainly to dispel doubt and confusion by understanding the object thoroughly. Among the many different types of wisdom, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, the ultimate nature of phenomena, is supreme. Whenever we meditate on emptiness, so emptiness of inherent existence is the ultimate form of wisdom. It says here, whenever we meditate on emptiness with the motivation of renunciation, we are training in higher wisdom. If we train in higher wisdom, eventually our mind will be released from all delusions, including self-grasping ignorance, and we will attain liberation from samsara. Anyone who practices the three higher training is said to be maintaining Buddha Dharma by means of realization. There are two ways to maintain Buddha Dharma, by means of scripture and by means of realization. We maintain Buddha Dharma by means of scripture when we listen to, read, or study Dharma, and we maintain Buddha Dharma by means of realization when we actually put these instructions into practice and gain realizations. That's more important for us. Okay, so when we gain attainments, when we gain realizations on the three higher trainings, that will be more beneficial, isn't it? So when at the end, what we gain here is liberation, non-enlightenment, liberation. You notice, we have to notice the subtle differences. When they say liberation is not enlightenment, it sounds like enlightenment. You may think it's enlightenment, but it's not. Liberation here is liberation from samsara, and samsara here is the causes of our suffering, and the deepest, the most important cause of our suffering is our self-grasping mind, because it's from the self-grasping mind, which I spoke about at the beginning, the self-identity that we think it's real. It is from that, the self-cherishing I, the terms they use, the self-cherishing I, the ego, and so forth, that we hold so real, so precious, that we protect, that we do all sorts of things to maintain it, to beautify it, to nurture it. Ultimately doesn't serve us, because what happens is we're creating more negative karma, because it doesn't really exist. And in order to see that it doesn't really exist, you need special type of wisdom, which is the highest, emptiness of inherent existence. All right, so So it's wisdom. On the very conventional basis, wisdom is not knowledge. It does sound like knowledge, but it's not knowledge. I just want to clarify some things because on what I hear, what people talk about, because when they say wisdom, when a person has wisdom, it's because the person has a lot of knowledge. Not necessarily. Wisdom is not knowledge. On a conventional basis, we're not talking of the teachings here, all right? Wisdom is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. Knowledge is just knowledge. It is not something that the person practices. It's not something that affects the person's character, judgment, and the way they do things. A person who has wisdom is someone who has taken the knowledge and done something with it. Perhaps become successful on a worldly basis is to become successful, become a nicer person, become generous, become skillful with people, become done some, develop into the career, become successful, develop that those things. So when they have that, then the person is able to help someone else based on their wisdom, based on the fact that they've used the knowledge and translated it into some sort of success, some sort of benefit for others and themselves. All right? So that's on a very worldly, conventional way what wisdom is. So they practice what they've learned. Because there are a lot of people who do not put it into practice. They just have a lot of knowledge. And it's the same thing in Buddhism. Just because a person is able to spout out a lot of Dharma, doesn't mean that a person is practicing. Okay, so it's important to understand this. All right. So when a person has wisdom, it's because they have done practice. They have the teachings, the knowledge, the teachings that they know in their heads have been put into practice, and merits have been accumulated, and it will result in realizations, beginning with renunciation. All right, since we have been talking about renunciation, everything is motivated by renunciation here. So that will be the main attainment right now, that will be easiest for us to achieve probably in this life, if we can develop a certain level of renunciation in our minds. And to develop renunciation, we do need to learn a little bit and understand a little bit more about what samsara means, about how our problems arises from the Buddhist perspective of self-grasping, self-cherishing mind, and and to have a grounding and understanding of how precious is this life and how we should use it. I know technically all of us know it's important, it's precious, it's one lifetime, but we don't know, we don't have a comparison when we have not studied, and that's why in the Lamrim there's a whole chapter on it. All right, on why it is so precious, this human life, and how we should seize it, carpe diem, so to speak. All right. Sharon here says something. Thank you, Pastor David and Pastor Niral. I just remembered that mantra rolling may be another way to help with concentration, especially when done with reciting mantras. Mantra rolling will be beneficial, yes, of course, it will be. But I think meditation is even better. I still think meditation will be better because you are dealing directly with the mind. Yes. The problem about mantra rolling, reciting mantras, is the person may not be focusing on what they're doing. The mind could be somewhere else. Most of the time it is. That's the problem of mantra rolling. But I mean, I won't call it a problem, but in gaining some sort of benefit from mantra rolling, one should have, then one should really focus. Most of the time, when we're doing mantra rolling, we're not really focused. We're just distracted. We're just somewhere else. All right. So as long it's more, you see, it's not bodily movement. It's the mind. When we're talking of concentration, we're dealing with the mind. not the body. If we're doing a mantra rolling, your mind must be in sync with what you're doing. So if the mind is in sync, then yes, there'll be some benefit. Otherwise, it was just a job, a work, some physical activity. All right. There, of course, it'll be virtuous work because it's dealing with mantras. There'll be some merits, but it will not be something that become like a benefit of a practice. It will not be so much the same as meditation when the person is focusing. Okay, so it's important. All practices is important that how our mind is operating on what base on not just what basis, it's on whether it is focusing or not, because ultimately we're talking of concentration here, right? So that's what we are trying to achieve, a level of concentration. Okay, what was I talking about? Wisdom. I'm going to touch a little bit, because we have some time, on high wisdom, on emptiness, a little bit, not so much, a little bit. Okay, so we spoke about, I was talking about the difference between knowledge and wisdom on a conventional level, and knowledge, wisdom from the level of a practitioner. Okay, from a level of conventionally, it is someone whose knowledge has fortified the person to be successful, be accomplished, be more confident, be more mature in their dealings. All right, as opposed when in Buddhism, it's not just that, it's higher. It's when the teachings have transformed this person. Transform in what way? How is a person transformed by the teachings? When they give up less, they give up more of their attachments, letting go of negative emotions like anger, jealousy, and so forth, and they focus less on worldly things, on their attachments lah. They focus less on that. These are signs of someone who has practiced, who is gaining some sort of wisdom already. Not gain real wisdom, gaining some sort of wisdom, because in order to see the value in Dharma, you definitely need some sort of wisdom. You definitely have some sort of wisdom to see the value in Dharma. If you do not have wisdom, you will not see the value of Dharma. You will find it's just technical knowledge, and perhaps even for people it will be boring. When you find Dharma boring, then because you don't know enough, that's one. Or if you know a lot and you still find it boring, that means that they always say it's not enough merits, or your samsara is stronger, so you're not practice. All right. So okay, this person has a comment. Wow. Okay, there's a lot of, I didn't realize there's a lot of there's a question from Jerry. What about walking meditation for teens? It's just like ventral rolling. It can be beneficial, but the person have to focus. The person really have to focus. There's a way, there's a rhythm of walking. There's a breathing associated with the walking. Breathing, concentration, and the pace. Okay, so it's a practice. So you do not immediately achieve, just like any form of meditation, you don't achieve concentration immediately. It's just a practice. So when you do it over time, it will have benefit. Definitely, because this is one of the practices that's recommended, I think, by the Buddha himself, who did it, who recommended it, who did it, and it's very beneficial. In fact, perhaps for a lot of people, it might be easier. I don't know. For me, it was not. Maintaining the pace is a bit difficult, and also your gaze. It's just like, when you're sitting, there's a certain posture that you have. Walking also, you have to have a certain posture, a certain gaze. You cannot look too far ahead to be distracted, or too near that you fall, that you close your eyes and you probably knock to something. So there's a lot of awareness involved, and there's a certain pace so that you develop some sort of focus on your step and the sensation and all that. Okay, Rinpoche has some teaching somewhere, I remember, and he explained all this. So it's wonderful. It definitely works to develop concentration. Okay, this is by Ifa Lana Awotunde. It's not a comment. Oh, it's to David. Oh no, it's not. It's not. It's spam. Oh, I thought it was a comment. Too bad. Giovanni Marotta. Good evening to you. You sound like you're somewhere far. Anyway, so that's what is important lah. So for right now, we're talking about higher wisdom. Where was I? I so forgot. I got distracted. Very bad concentration. Obviously, never have very little practice in meditation. So earlier I was talking about the wisdom versus knowledge from a lay perspective and from the Dharma perspective. All right. So now we go into what I wanted to talk about, which is a little bit about just a touch, surface touch, not the actual thing, because I'm not qualified. Trust me. Emptiness is not nothingness, although the word is empty, or voidness, or shunyata. It means that the reality that we're perceiving, it is not as we see it. All right, so it is beyond our limitations that we put on it, because how we perceive reality is based on ourselves. Because we need a point of reference. In order to see and perceive things, there's a point of reference. It's always the point of reference is from ourselves, our experience, our past, our knowledge, how we, like in order to understand how a table is, we have been taught that a table is something that's flat with legs, a flat piece of board and four legs. So that we perceive it as that's a rough object and that means table. So that's why everything we perceive is based on filters, based on knowledge, based on whatever we've been taught, based on, on our past experiences, our past reaction to experiences, and so forth. So emptiness is having none of that. It's directly perceiving reality as it really is. Directly. So when we directly perceive, at the moment we cannot perceive because we are not trained to perceive reality directly. We are trained to perceive, we have been taught from birth to perceive our surroundings and people based on our set of knowledge, on the set of experiences, and we are trained, we're so good at it. Sometimes we can almost predict what's going to happen to something based on past experience. Okay, that's profiling, that is prediction, that is, whatever it is. But anyway, we're so good at it. So emptiness is not any of that. Emptiness is to have a clean slate and to perceive reality as it really is. So it's empty of inherent existence. Inherent existence is everything that is fixed. Because when we are talking about existence, how we perceive existence is in our mind, in our perception of things. We always we have an expectation of permanency. Examine it, you have to think about it. It's something you need to meditate and you contemplate. We always expect things to remain the same. There's always an expectation for it to be perfect, to remain the same, never changing, always to our benefit. All right? So when you have all these criteria, you are perceiving things according to your self-interest. So you are definitely not achieve emptiness. So what you're talking about is very, very basic of emptiness, which is enough for us to arrive a grounding already to what. Because actually emptiness is, the deeper level is beyond words lah. Beyond words, beyond color. That's why when Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, the Buddha, the Bodhisattva of compassion, spoke about, was requested by the Buddha to talk about emptiness, right? He went into negation. Negation means what? He said, there's no eye, no ear, no nose, no mother, no father, no friend, no this, no, everything is no, nothing, no. So when you negate everything, nothing really, everything is gone. All perception of all ideas, all these are ideas, all these are labels in our mind, right? When you negate it, everything is gone, then you see things as it really is. Okay, so I won't go too much into it because I'm not really qualified to talk about it, but I would like to talk about it because we're talking about it in this chapter. So, I need to explain a little bit. So I give you a little taste of it, and because it is possible for a person, because the Buddha has achieved it. Because you're thinking, oh, it's so far out and having no perception of labels and no restrictions of this, no mental formation. How are you going to operate? You cease to exist or something? No, you don't. There are beings who are able to achieve that level of perception where see things as they truly are. That they're able to. It is an attainment of the mind. And signs of a person who has achieved emptiness is they are able to dissolve their ego. When they dissolve the ego, the self-grasping mind, they become selfless. So when they dissolve the ego, they have no ego anymore. It's the foundation for all karma. Negative karma is gone. You purify all negative karma. You gain liberation. You do not suffer. You do not create any more causes to suffer, because by gaining an emptiness, you destroy the foundation of all the cause to suffer. That is what is liberation on a technical basis. Okay, so when you don't suffer anymore, you gain liberation, but you're not enlightened. Unfortunately, you're not a Buddha yet because you still have imprints. Besides karma, we have imprints. There's a difference, okay? There's karma, there's imprints, subtle traces of karma. Once your karma is purified, right, there is still imprints. We have a lot imprints or seeds or whatever. There's a lot of terms in the Dharma. So that can only be eradicated completely by achieving bodhicitta, okay, which is not covered in this chapter, but I'll just let you know. All right. Some comments here from Sharon in response to Jerry. Walking meditation is harder for me. I keep trying to focus on not falling down. Yeah, me too, Sharon. I actually find it easier to just do the breath meditation with JP Tong. So, and yeah, that's why it's important for people to engage in walking meditation. The place is important for it to be conducive, for it to be clear. That you do not have to focus so much on where you're stepping, more on the sensation of each step and the pace. So there's a certain pace that you have to take, something like that. The certain pace that's not too fast, not too slow. All right. And there's a lot of things that goes along with it. It's not as simple as it seems. Because otherwise, because all of us are walking all the time, we can be doing walking meditation any day. You can't. We just walking is not so simple. It's got to be a conducive place, got to be so that you don't focus on your surroundings, on where you step and all that. All right. And so okay. So I kind of covered that, and I don't think I have any questions regarding wisdom. Do you have any questions regarding wisdom? If you do have any questions regarding wisdom or what I've talked about in terms of wisdom, knowledge, from the lay perspective, from the Dharma perspective, Dharma practitioner perspective, and of what I spoke about emptiness. And also one last thing about emptiness, right? It has to be free of the two extreme of nihilism and eternalism. Don't even ask me what it means. One is where nothing really truly exists. One is everything is fixed. Okay, so it's two extremes of views. Because when you blow up all concepts and all, you can make it seem in your mind it can be nothing really truly exists, and that's one extreme of view that you hit off the mark and you won't be able to achieve emptiness. And the other one is everything is fixed, everything is hard and fast rules. All phenomena is hard and fast rules. It can be either of these two extreme. So you cannot go into any of the both extremes. You have to go the middle path, and then you achieve emptiness. What I'm telling you is just from the the very basic readings I have, and it covers the surface level of what emptiness is, and it's enough for you to have a taste of it, I think. And at this point, it's important for us to really start to delve into it. Don't think of it as something that is difficult. Think of it as something that you have to eventually know, because at least have an idea what it is. So that, because when we do want to go for higher practices like Vajrayogini and all that, we need to be grounded in the three principal paths. One of them is emptiness. So it's important for us to have an idea what it is. We may not be attained and we will not have achieved emptiness. We don't need to achieve emptiness in order to gain initiation, but it will be required at least to have knowledge of it, some sort of knowledge of it. All right. And emptiness, which is we need to have renunciation, the three principal paths: renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. These three. Okay, so it's a requirement, and it's also all that is spoken is already in the Lamrim. All right. Okay, I can see that I've went on and on and on, and I didn't have any questions so far. Then I will do dedication and call it a night. So if you do have any questions, ask me next week. Next week will be, let's see what's next week. The path to enlightenment. Beginning, it's a whole section actually. It's a third section, part 3. Beginning with becoming a bodhisattva. This is on they kind of made it like the Lamrim, this book. So there's like the lower scope, middling scope, and now it's like kind of like the higher scope. So yeah, becoming a bodhisattva. I think we'll be talking about bodhicitta. Yes, it's going to talk about bodhicitta and how to achieve that on a very basic level. Okay, that'll be next week. So today, this session is dedicated to, to Stacy Sidro. The dedication is: may everyone be happy, have equanimity, be free from misery and attachment, and quickly attain enlightenment. And the other sponsor is Jason. Dedication to: may the world have peace and harmony. And finally, to Melvin Chong: may the merit accumulated benefit all sanctioned beings and the Buddha Dharma, and may my Guru 10 Rinpoche's incarnation swiftly return. And the last sponsor is an anonymous sponsor with the dedication of: may our holy Guru return swiftly and turn the Dharma wheel. All right. So with these sponsors in mind, we make the dedication. Chanchu Sencho Rinpoche, Magye Panagyu, Geba Yama Mipayang, Gonen Godu Pewasho, Tony Tonga Rinpoche, Magye Panagyu, Geba Yama Mipayang, Gonen Godu Pewasho, Dazo Chini Sapa Gewadi, Tanandroa Gonlang Kampanta, Jeba Jozo Lozon Drapai, Tan Being Borindo Sao Sho, Gewa Gundo Yana Lamada, Dremi Choki Pala Long Choshen, Sada Langi on the Rajoni, Doji Changi Gopan Yutosho, Gewadi. Yuruda Lama Sangye Juhuni, Jo wa chi kya ma lu pa de sa la go pa sho chu chi ja wo song ka ba jo son na ma pe wa la ge ge ja ma che wa da to ni ma lo sha sho da da she ge do son da ju wa chi la te ni kya wo lo son dra pa yi tam pa yin pa gyu shi ni mo da la san ta la ne me go yin da la shin ya san ta to da la pa kon jo son jin gyu lo kon jo so yin ngo to so kon jo so ta shi sho ja so la ma ku so ra tan shi nam ka shi ge pa da lo son ta mi jo min samsung ge dro mo so ta to ne gyu shi kan ri ra we ko e shin gam da pen da wo ma lo kyong we na chen re zik wan ten ya so yi sha pe si de ba do dan gyu shi hong to me ngo dro ma lo pa den da la sa do so ko dan tan ba lo chon na ke ba so shi shuk den sell. Thank you everybody and good night.